Welcome to Chatting with Stacks. I'm your host, Bill Stacks, and today I got Frank DiMatteo.
So now we're standing there saying, "Uh-oh, the boss, you're the boss, two capos, two killers." Now Anthony went, and we're with
Now,
Anthony,
you
and
get a
Anthony knows
phone
all our
call?
business.
You get a phone call saying, hey, Anthony's no good now.
We get a phone call from someone that in the know that knows they took him out of circulation. That's how you find out. Someone knew he got out of circulation. Probably somebody in jail that that there, and they saw him pulling out of circulation, and they got in touch with somebody, and somebody got in touch with us and say he got it pulled out of circulation.
And
That's what they don't tell you. Flip. They don't
once
tell you
they're out
what's
of
wrong.
circulation, they're no
Right.
good no more.
We knew what that minute, so we knew we were screwed after that. So we just waited to see what happened after that because Anthony knew all our business. We did many things together, and Anthony knew my father's business because you just know because they were at that level. My father was at his level in a lot of ways, so you know what he did and reputation. So what happened was nothing came about. You know, Anthony went on trial. Anthony testified against everybody, and none of the guys in the crew got picked. We got picked up originally, but no one got indicted or on anything. So we just sat there and waited. And what happened was Anthony testified whatever he did. He flipped on whoever he did a chin, everybody, and went in the program. Never saw him again. But in between that, Fritzy Giovanelli. I got my wife's here. I don't remember. Fritzy, we had a meeting before this all happened on Court Street. Fritzy had a guy that was in the DA's office that let him know that there was a surveillance on Anthony and those guys. So Fritzy grabbed my father because we're very close and says, "Listen, Ricky, Anthony's got a investigation on him. Go grab him, let him know." So we had a meeting on Court Street. Fritzy comes down because they're both straightened out, so they had to be there. And he tells him that he didn't tell him who he had, what he had. He just told him there was a open investigation is happening. So what happens was, okay, so Anthony cooled down and like that. But after he got pinched and he flips, he tells the law nothing about that. What happens is that Ricky was involved with that, put that meeting together, and we were at that meeting. So what happens is Fritzy asked my father to be a character witness for him at trial. So my father says yes. Bad move.
That's a
But the
really
audience said
bad
okay.
move, though, if you're in that life
Very
to be
bad.
a character witness in court,
Very bad.
right?
Very bad move. Yeah, my father had seven murders, three trials, and beat all three murders of the seven. I mean, drug pinches, assaults. I mean, all his life is with the Gallos. He's bodyguard to Larry Gallos since 1962. I mean, it's a fucking bad move. But what do we know? That's what they choose. That's what the lawyers want. Ricky, being a friend for Fritzy, says, whatever you want me to do, I'll do. As a friend, you want me to do it, I'll come and do it. Anyway, I got the transcripts. It's in that book. What We're Really Cowboys, Life After President Street. The transcript's in there. It's a fucking hilarious. He goes to be character for Fritzy, and they ask nothing about Fritzy. All they ask about is Gallows and killings and 62 and who's boss and who's not boss and who's Robin Hood and who's in charge and what they did in 62 and 65 and anyway, and that's what they did. So
Does
anyway,
your
he gets
father
convicted.
answer this stuff? Does he
Yeah, he
answer?
answered. Yeah, he answered everything. He says it's in the book. I know what you're talking about. We're just a bunch of guys on the corner that it was crazy. And he goes, we're like Robin. So the guy says, you're like Robin Hood in the 70s. Yeah, that's like that. We're like Robin Hood in the 70s and unorganized crime. He goes, we're just a bunch of guys that people bartering, and things happen. It was just crazy. You know what I mean? They asked if you were boss of the Gallo family. And he goes, no. They said, well, we had signed affidavits that there was a meeting in 73, which I was at, that they asked Ricky to take over the Gallo crew. They didn't want Albert to when it was a breakup in 73 in that family, and they asked Ricky to take the crew. He said no. And anyway, they knew this. Funzawa was there. Frank Terry came to that meeting, and Joe Shapani came for that meeting in 1973 on Woodhall Street. Anyway, it was a big breakup, and that's why there was another war in 73 to 75. Anyway, the law knew all this, And they asked him, he says, well, and how they knew this, because everybody at that meeting I know, including me, my friend Gubadil, and the guys that were involved. And nobody that I know of ever went bad to this day. They either dead, got shot, in jail. In fact, they're all dead. But I never heard none of them go bad. But this law, in the transcripts, I'm listening, is that they asked him, well, we know that you were asked at that meeting to take over to be the capo in that fair in the Gallos. He said, no, 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 denied everything, denied everything. And we're scratching our head now. How do you know this? I mean, because everybody there, now this is 20 years later, 73, 83, 93. This is 25 years later. Everyone's dead. No one we know went bad. And then we figured out. Probably Anthony Rotunda, when the law went to him at one point, or Anthony Capo, or one of those guys that went bad before that, told him that Ricky was, instrumental down with the Gallo Pafaci wars and the breakup in '73, and that they wanted Ricky to, because well respected guy, they wanted him to be the capo in that, or be the boss of that crew. Yeah. And questioned him on that. And he denied it. But they came up, that's what they came up with. Nothing to do with Fritzy's trial, nothing to do with, anything. And I put it in the book. And so Anthony, what happened was the law went back to Anthony, says, who's this guy, Ricky? Tell us about it, that he's testifying for Fritzy. And he goes, oh, whoa, yeah. I go, well, you got to give us something on him. And he gave us a few things. He gave a few things about a couple of adult business we were in, a couple of bars and topless joints we were involved with. He gave it up, but nothing bad. And they grabbed the owners of the place. They subpoenaed them, and they said, no, we're not being shooken down. We're all partners over here. That's it. So I had to throw everything away. But he had to give something up, because
they would have ripped his deal up. They would have ripped his deal up.
Not giving us up, by Ricky going to that. So Fritzy gets convicted because he didn't help him for shit, because it was terrible, and then we get picked up for the couple of topless joint, some adult business. We had a video company and stuff, and we all got questioned again with the owners of it, and that gets thrown out too. And then Anthony goes in the sunset, and then we turn around. Ricky turns around, tells me, he says, all those guys are pinched. He goes, Viniosha's pinched, the second under command's pinched, the three shooters we know that were up there, they were all done. And Anthony, which he was there to school, he flipped. We're done. He goes, what do you want to do? Because I'm going to Florida. I said, okay. He goes, you want to come? You want to stay? I said, okay, I'm going to stay for a while. I got the kids, we're not children, we're older people by now. I was probably in my 40s at the time, 20 years ago, 24 years ago. Yeah, I was like 45, so we're up there. I got kids, grandchildren coming. So I started to stay a little while, and my father left to Florida, and he just said, fuck it, I'm done. No one came knocking after that, with that family, because, the Jersey crew was so fucked up now, because there was so many guys went bad. What are going to come in the Brooklyn crew and ask them what's going on? They were afraid to even ask anybody in Brooklyn who they are, what they have, what they don't have, because they don't know who was going bad. So no one ever asked anybody. In fact, all the Brooklyn guys got released. They went other places. Who knows? Who went everywhere? Who went home? Who went to, did nothing? But everybody got released from that Brooklyn crew. A lot of guys are old, and they wound up dying. And that's what happened with that Jersey thing with Samuel Plummer. I tell you a good story. We were at I forgot what year it was. Samuel Plummer stepped down, but he was up there, and it was he funded some kind of a nunnery in Italy. It was a big funder for it. So every year they had this big dinner in Jersey. So we had to get a table. It was 10 of us got a table, 150 each, and we had a table. And we had this big function, beautiful function. And Samuel Plummer was there. And the first time I never met Samuel Plummer. I think it was always in Florida. He had a ruling panel running Jersey already. I think of that John Riggy was in charge already, but he was still, Samuel Plummer, the Cavalcanti family. You know, that's his. And he comes down and he asks him to go on stage. They go on stage. Everybody's watching. Everybody's eating and drinking. He gets on stage and he talks about the nuns in Italy and all this shit, what it's about. And then he turns around and he says, and I got to tell you something. And he goes, what? He goes, I don't like my family arguing. And you hear a pin drop. And everybody looks up. He goes, I don't like stuff like that. He goes, you guys got to stop doing this like that. All of a sudden, you see a bunch of people stand up and run out the door. It was the mayor of this town. It was the police chief. It was a DA and stuff like that. They came for this function, and then so many plumbers up there talking about family business because he was senile, but he was getting up. He was senile by that. We just looked at each other and said, "Holy shit! Did we just hear that?" But that's how he was an old timer. He was losing his mind, and he gets up in 500 people in this hall, cops, the mayor, police chief, anybody you can think of that was legit. The Italians, you know, with this committee,
Yeah.
and they just shit, and we just like looked at each other and said, "Oh God!" And
What
they
got
up.
nervous, right? They got all scared.
You got this guy that's, you know, oh, he had to be 80 by the time he's shot. You know what I mean? But, you know, he had half his wits, and he's going there, you know, telling me, thank you for coming to this Italian thing for this nunnery in Italy. And in the middle of it, he stops and tells people, I don't like my family arguing. I don't like this guy doing this guy doing that. And everybody was like fucking shocked. Never believed something like that would happen. Like he was talking in a meeting privately. And everybody, I mean, people ran out of the place. I mean, that's the only time I met him. Met him that one time, and that was it.
And the character in The Sopranos is probably based off of him when he started going senile, right?
I think so. But, you know, I mean, a lot of that, you know, I was involved with that too. I was driving home. We had there was a informant with us at the time, just before I would say 98 or 99, before the pinch came down. We used to go to a place in Staten Island. Anthony used to have meetings in Staten Island. We used to go meet him over there. Roselli's, I think the place was in Staten Island. And there was a rat with us, a cop. It was a cop and a rat. We didn't know that. So one night we're driving home, and I think I was driving Anthony. I was driving. My father was in the car. Anthony Rotunda, and the rat, or the informant, or the cop. I'm not sure which one. And they start talking about The Sopranos.